there's a Mormon apologist that says that one of the blessings, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, he says one of the blessings about Mormonism is Latter-day Revelation, but at the same time, one of the curses of Mormonism is Latter-day Revelation. And there's a classic example of that just took place recently here in Salt Lake City, where a man in his, I believe he's in his 30s, who claims that Joseph Smith visited him in the Salt Lake Temple and told him that he was the reincarnated Hyrum Smith. And I went down with my associate Eric Johnson, my co-author of Mormonism 101, and we decided to go down because they were going to dedicate a headstone to Hyrum Smith with his name on it. His name is Christopher Nemelka, and he really believes that he's the reincarnated Joseph Smith. So they had a big press conference down there. Channel 5, KSL was there, and about probably 70 people, maybe to 100 people were there to listen to this man's attorney dedicate a headstone that had the name of Hyrum Smith on it, and his birthday and death date, and Christopher Nemelka's name with his birth date. And Nemelka believes when he dies, he's going to be buried in this plot. He owns that plot now. First time I ever saw a headstone with a website address on it. I mean, we've come a long ways in recent years, I guess. And but anyway, he started to tell the story. The attorney started telling the story of how this man was visited by Joseph Smith and really feels that he's the reincarnated Hyrum. And he was able to talk the woman who owned that plot. And you have to understand, at the Salt Lake Cemetery, there is a section of the cemetery dedicated only to Smith family members. That's all who's buried here. In fact, this headstone is not very far away from the grave of Joseph Fielding Smith, the 10th president of the church. He was able to talk Ida Smith, who owned the last plot, the way they tell the story, the way I understood it. She had the last empty plot in this section. And he was able to convince her that he was the reincarnated Hyrum, and she ended up giving or selling, I'm not sure, her plot. So he dedicates this headstone, okay, through his attorney, and it surely has made a lot of Smith family members very upset, because you've got to be a Smith to be buried there, and he's not. Well, he thinks he is. So anyway, we went to go hear this guy afterwards speak and explain his story, and he retells the story, how he was visited, and he really believes that he's called of God to basically correct the Mormon church in all their erring ways, and he's got followers. So you might want to remember that name, Christopher Nemelka, because he may be a big flash in the pan, or it may be a big thing, I don't know. But I know he sure has upset a lot of Mormons here. And there were some Mormons that were in the crowd, and Eric told me this story. He was standing next to him, and as the attorney was speaking out at the cemetery, they were making little, under the breath, snide comments. And they were also at the meeting later on at the Unitarian Church, makes sense, where Nemelka spoke. They were also there, and they got up and left early, and as they were leaving, Nemelka says to them, "Hey, you'll be able to catch this on the internet." And one of them says something like, "Why should we?" I wanted so badly to go outside and talk to them and say, really, what's so different between this guy and Joseph Smith? I mean, you all have a preconceived worldview, and obviously with your worldview, he doesn't fit it. But yet with most of Christianity, Joseph Smith didn't fit their worldview, and that's why he was met with criticism. So what's the difference? Both of them are coming up with outlandish stories. And yet you don't want to believe him because you already want to believe Joseph Smith. But yet, why would anybody want to believe a kid 14, saying that he saw God, when Exodus 33:20 says, if you see God, you die? And that's what he said in his Joseph Smith translation. He actually added to Exodus 33:20, making it sure that he didn't see God. And why would he do that, you might ask? Well, because in 1830, when he's doing this translation, quote unquote, 1830 to 1833, he wasn't saying that he saw God. He doesn't tell that story until 1838. Nobody ever knew of that first vision story before then. Nobody. It's not in any journals, it's not in any printed paper that the Mormon Church ever put out. The idea of the Father and the Son visiting Joseph Smith was unknown for almost 2 decades in the early Mormon Church. That's a later invention of Smith. So, okay, so why would you not believe him? What makes him so different than Joseph Smith? What's your authority to say he's wrong? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who take this guy seriously, and they're going to have a lot of heartache when they find out he's just as big a fraud as Joseph Smith.